Hey, well, I had a lovely 35-minute podcast and we're redoing it because I got a phone call that I had to deal with, and I will tell you all about that. Hi, I'm Laura from The Yarn Closet. I am in my yarn closet and I live in southern Arizona. I live less than 2 hours from the Mexican border. It's Saturday. It's been a long week. I love being at the library at school. The weeks go fast, and I found my Read Braille pin. I put it on my knitting bag. So let's talk knitting first, and then we'll talk some shenanigans so you can shut me up if you don't want to hear about it. I think that a cat chewed my hair last night because when I was walking this morning, I have like this one little chunk that is way shorter than the rest. Anyway, so I've been keeping a sock bag because I do this business, and every once in a while I need to just take a break. I need to take an eye break from the long computer work or whatever, or because I am a volunteer, and like on Thursdays my daughter has Lego League until 4:30. Well, the library closes at 4, so I knit for a half an hour then, and sometimes I'll knit if I take an actual lunch. This was our last week with kids. The next 3 weeks were closed. So your libraries and schools are either closed before the end of the school year so the librarian can do inventory, or sometimes they pay them over the summer to do inventory. You've got to inventory your library so that you can see if some kid shoved a book somewhere randomly. You don't want to be charging kids late fees or charging kids for books that never get turned in. When they are actually turned in because they asked their friend to turn it in and their friend just walked in the library and shoved it on a shelf. It happens. Especially like for my friend Danielle at this library, who's been the only librarian for 5 years. And it's a big library. That's a lot to keep track of. You don't have eyes in the back of your head. Now, if you're a blind lady, you got ears in the back of your head, so you can tell what's going on 360. And let me tell you, some snotty little 6th graders were not appreciating that fact about me this week. But I am finishing up this. I put these heels in. You know, all sock yarns are not the same. This is a Tarhi-based sock yarn. I would sell it as a sport weight. And so this heel is going to be much thinner, but I don't typically blow out the heels and toes. I blow out I usually blow out right up below the toe here. That's where I usually blow out. And then I end up blowing out all this stuff between this whole chunk. So then I have to either re-knit my toes constantly, but like half of my bottom foot is really what I'm re-knitting. So I tend to just patch. I will patch like that, or I will weave patch, and eventually I'll get pissed off because I've done it enough and I will throw it away. And then I will end up with singles, and I will wear mismatched socks to school. I don't care. My shoes cover them up. Nobody cares. So I have this pair. I've got to weave in some ends and pray that they fit comfortably, because a lot of times I just don't make it quite deep enough. And then I've got to figure out where I'm going to put in the heel on that one. And this teacher, my daughter's 2nd grade teacher, started knitting again. And she's like, well, what do you keep in your knitting bag? Like, what are the extras? These are TV glasses. If you are stuck in bed flat on your back, you can put a TV at the end of your bed. You can wear these, not have to move, and you can see the end of your bed. But it also means I can look straight ahead, and with these, I can knit down here without having to do this. And because I have ankylosing spondylitis in my neck, back, hip, it's very helpful. Ankylosing spondylitis is a form of large joint arthritis. Arthritis is when the cushy area between your joints kind of fills with some hard stuff. And most arthritis, it's just going to be a little bit, and it's going to cause some lack of full range of motion in joints. And that's why you see people that are a little bit curvy fingered, because a lot of times it's just small joints. But when you have it in large joints, and like I had early onset, so over a long period of time with it, you can actually get places where it fuses the joint. Like I've got 2 in my neck that are fused. Like it's full between where the spongy stuff was, the spongy stuff's gone. It's just the, whatever that arthritis material is that forms. I don't know if it's like bone spur material. I don't really understand what has calcified in there to make it hard and like locked. And then I've got a spot in my lower back. And so anyway, so if I can knit with those glasses and not have to, I'm finding that to be far more helpful. Now, you can get them on Amazon, but you can get different varieties, and some of them are heavier than others. So that's something to be, like if you get a pair that seems really heavy, order a different brand and just see if it's a little different. And I also keep the sockruler.com in there because you can, as you're knitting your heel, you can shove it right in through the heel to the toe, and this fills the toe space out just perfectly. And you can see just exactly if you're coming up to the right measurement. And because it's hard, it's just easier, and it's got the curve like the toe. It's just easier than using a measuring tape. So those are my, oh wait, maybe I have one more thing worth mentioning. I've gotten a few, like at my local yarn shop, I got one weird little leather pouch thing. And then I got this one, I think, online somewhere. But I like these little leather pouches. They seem quite hard, but they actually keep, if you use a little bit bigger yarn needle, that it actually stays in there. It doesn't fall out. And I can keep the scissors and needle secured. So those, I guess, are my 3 little tips for in your project bag or your sock bag particularly. And then today I'm also going to work at fixing this. My daughter brought one of the water bottle holders on a field trip, and she says she didn't drag it along any cement or brick, but it banged against something. So I will fix that today. And lately I've been annoyed because not all sock yarn is built the same. Because you had that lovely Tarhi stuff, and then I've got this pair. This pair is almost, I mean, can you see it? You can't see it, but it's almost see-through. I just know that's gonna blow out a lot, and I just love that rainbow yarn. And like this sock yarn, once again, is still an 80-20, just like that, and it knit at the same gauge. And this is just not, I suppose when I put it up to the window, it's a little, I can tell there's a little light coming through it, but it is by far not as thin as that one. And they're both 80-20s. They're just, sock yarns are just not built the same. It's just shocking to me and annoying. So the phone call that interrupted our last lovely podcast was my mom. My parents are sick. We believe they all have COVID. My dad, who's 86, is really sick, but refused to go to the urgent care with my other parents this morning. And my stepdad went into the urgent care and got tested, and he has COVID. So he's going on Paxlovid. He's dropping my mom off. She's going to test at home. She's had COVID before and been on Paxlovid, so she's not worried about it. And she's by far not as symptomatic as they are. And because neither one of them have had COVID, but they've both been vaccinated. So wherever you fall in that camp, you know. But my dad, who's 86, my stepdad's gonna pick him up and take him into urgent care to get tested so that he can get on the Paxlovid if he's positive. I basically just told him, you're gonna do that. And explained to him why. But he will have the opportunity, as I'm recording this, to talk to my stepdad and turn him down and say no if he wants to. And that's his choice. And he may do that. Because he's really been in that old age depression for a while now. He's lost a lot of oomph for life and people and relationships, and it's been hard. I mean, he's got untreated kidney cancer because he had bladder cancer 14 years ago. 14 years ago. He had bladder cancer. So when they take out your bladder, they attach a urinary bag to one of your kidneys directly through your torso, basically. That's the kidney that he got the kidney cancer on. And they did a lot of testing for over a year, and they just didn't feel great about him having that kidney removed and putting the bag on the other kidney. Now, they would have done it if he wanted to, but they felt like there was a very high chance of him ending up on dialysis the rest of his life, and he doesn't want to be on dialysis the rest of his life. He's had some friends who've been on it, and he just doesn't want to do that. So he has opted to not have any interventions and allowing the kidney cancer to grow just over time. We're now 5 years down the road from that, and having that cancer just continuously grow in his body and being the age that he is, it's run him down. He's run down a lot of the time. And it's sad for him. Plus he's a man, so he doesn't prioritize socialization as much. And that's why I go up as often as I can, at least every 2 weeks, if not more. Because like we threw in last weekend and, so I would have seen him like just about every 5 days this month, so he's seeing family, and we're doing the best we can. It's very hard, and people have said some interesting things to me. I had a friend who lost her mom a couple of years ago, and she made a crack about, but it's so nice when they go in the inheritance. And I thought, Jared's mom died 5 years ago. There wasn't an inheritance. When my dad dies, there's not going to be an inheritance. When my other parents die, I don't know that there's going to be an inheritance. Because the medical care right before end of life can just take anything right out of the bat. I mean, I remember when my grandma died and we had to pay back $1,200 to the nursing home. There was no inheritance. I mean, I think nowadays, if you can have a parent die or a spouse die and not walk away with debt, you're doing great. There's no life insurance on my husband. You can't wait until you get a sickness and then want to plan for it, because then you don't qualify. You can't get that. And if you don't honestly know what your business offers, like he thought that he had some life insurance through his pension plan, but he never really understood what it was. He just had some ideas about it. When we actually found out about it, the reality was vastly different than what he thought was going to happen. He thought he was going to leave us in this great shape where everything was going to be more, and it's going to be less. There is no insurance, and things will be cut. The pension will be cut. And that is not his idea of it. But he never really knew. He didn't keep the papers from when he went on it and all this other stuff. I think that, and I see it in the kids nowadays. They just shove aside these things. If I don't look at it, then I don't have to deal with it. But guess what? You actually are living within the constraints of that consequence, and you are living with it. If you get your license revoked from the state because of unpaid parking tickets or claims or whatever, and they revoke your license, if you're not paying on that bill, they won't reinstate your license. So you may be ignoring that bill, but you're still living within the constraints of not having a license. So now you pay as much a month to Uber as you could to buy a car. So if you lived within the discomfort of paying on that for a year or two, then you could get the license and you could get the car. If you live in a crappy neighborhood because you've got an eviction on your record and you haven't paid that off and it keeps growing, you're continuing to live with this greater and greater growing thing even though you're ignoring it. You're still living within the constraints of it. And at some point you're going to want to have to pay attention. And I see this in young people nowadays, and I see it in elderly people. I have an experience of being a massage person to elderly people in a nursing home, in a hospice ward, and overhearing a lot of the conversations from the families. It is shocking how many people just kind of ignore end-of-life conversations, thinking, I won't have to deal with it. When my stepdad's dad died, everybody thought he had terminal cancer. He did not. He did not. And he left one hell of a mess of paperwork and stuff, and it was a lot of work. I watched my friend with her brothers deal with her parents as they went through it, and she lost her mom, and then a few years later she lost her dad. And I mean, but luckily she had a brother that she worked really well with, being the out-of-state one, and she was always flying down. And they handled things, but that's because her dad, although he didn't want to deal with it, he allowed them to come in, and he just allowed them to advise him to do things that made it easier in the long run. And boy, I am taking all of this in as a lesson for how I want to set things up for my children. I'm coming to terms with, like, my online friends that are my age and older. They're 50s and 60s. A lot of the 50s people struggling in the menopause era of, I'm in competition with my younger self and this and that. The 50s are a struggle, and then they're like, ooh, but the 60s are great. You know, you're beyond a certain point. You know, the gray is grayed. You are there, mama. And you're like, I want my life. But I think there's also a balance that comes to that of making sure that I can help my children, because I'm like, it's taken a lot to get my kid, who's going to be a senior next year, to really start to be positive in looking forward in the future. Because even though the economy is so much harder for him, he doesn't have to move out. He can stay, and he can just save his money, and he can, and he doesn't have to work while he goes to college. I mean, we have, because he's on the spectrum, I just think that would be too much for him. I'm like, in the midst of everything, I have saved away a little chunk that will at least pay for community college. Let's get you a 2-year community college degree. Because I'm telling you, a lot of schools nowadays, as one option for employment, a lot of schools, grade schools, middle schools, high schools, have a lot more positions within the school that used to be filled with bachelor's and master's degree level educated people that are now being filled by people that are considered paraprofessionals that have a 2-year associate's degree, whether it's in early childhood education, education in general, or just a 2-year degree. There's this level of employment called paraprofessional. You may be not making as much, but like in Arizona, minimum wage is 14 something an hour, but most starting off teachers start off making like $32,000 a year. So you had to go get a bachelor's degree and pay for another year to a year and a half of teacher education training and get your licensure. You had to pay for all that. And you're starting out at 32, and this paraprofessional with a 2-year degree that costs about $7,000, $8,000 is starting off at 29. You do the math. So it costs you $75,000 to get this degree, to start out at 32, or $7,000 to get this degree and start out at 29. And a lot of the schools, because so many of the more educated teachers have left, they're having to fill those positions. And when I say positions, people ask me, what do I mean? Librarians quite often used to be people who had library degrees that were bachelor's degrees or master's degrees in library sciences. And many schools would only hire librarians that were also teacher certified so that they had a built-in like substitute teacher right on the premises. But nowadays, you just need bodies to fill stuff. So now a lot of librarians are like me. They are 2-year degree people. They are paraprofessional level. And it all depends. Iowa is a unique state in which its teacher regulations are vastly different than the rest of the states. At least when my husband, who was a teacher, was interviewing 20 years ago, Iowa, you didn't have to have specialized teacher training. You just had to have a degree higher than the level you were teaching. So if you wanted to teach preschool, kindergarten, you had to have a certificate. If you wanted to teach grade school, middle school, high school, you had to have a 2-year degree or a bachelor degree. If you wanted to teach at the community college level, you had to have a bachelor's degree or higher. You didn't have to have an extra teacher certification. So most states, to be a teacher, you need a 4-year degree, whether it's in education or mathematics or just whatever, history, whatever. But then you go on to have another teacher certification that's like a master's degree, that's usually a year to a year and a half program. And so my ex-husband, who was a teacher, had a bachelor's degree, had a master's degree, and had done that teacher certification that was a year and a half long, depending on how fast you can do it. He did that in 2 different states. Actually, he may have done it in 3 states. Because he may have done it here after we got divorced, because he was a teacher here also. But I don't know. Some of his other state stuff may have transferred. Arizona's a little bit more lax, because years ago, Arizona was the last state in the nation of worst education on the planet. No joke. We're not anymore. We're like 40th. But I just think a kid can go to the best state in the union get a bad education if they're just not putting effort in. Because I really believe a lot of what kids get out of education is what they put into it. And I don't know that that's something that I feel like we used to teach more to that. That we used to teach more even in the schools about like all these extracurricular things. Okay, when I was in school, it was taught at math team and mock trial and chess club and all these competitions. When we go to the competitions, we're going to dress a certain way. We're going to present ourselves a certain way because people judge us on our appearance. People judge us on our manners. People judge us on our articulation. Can you articulate? Can you have manners and grace when you're in communication with people? And do you look clean and tidy? And we had a long conversation yesterday with the 6th grade book club because they are relaxing the dress code come next year with this long conversation about it. Because they find the whole thing stupid and dumb, and why can't we just come to school in our pajamas? And blah, 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 blah. People go to Walmart, whatever. And it's like, because we want to show respect to one another, because we want to because we understand that whether it's right or wrong, people do judge each other even unconsciously. I got off on a soapbox. Put out the good vibes for my parents. Pray your prayers, do whatever you want to do, but look with your heart first, not your eyes. And we'll talk next week. That is the second coffee cup this week I have broken.